She heard his name announced across a crowded drawing room, and she did not turn her head. Lady Cassia Osborne, Countess of Westholme, set her wine-glass on the table beside her with the careful precision of a woman who has trained herself over 15 years not to let her hands betray her. And she smiled at Mr. Greaves and told him to go on. The candles on the chimney-piece at 8 Brook Street threw warm light across 40 guests, across proof sheets stacked on the sideboard, and the smell of beeswax and November rain against the glass. And somewhere behind her, crossing the room with the particular hesitation of a man who had just understood where he was, Tristram Harcourt, Duke of Ellisford, was looking for the face of a stranger, and finding instead the one face in London he had spent 15 years learning to avoid. He did not know this was her house. He had not known it in the carriage, or at the door, or in the hall. He knew it now. Mr. Greaves was a young barrister from the Temple with a clear argument and excellent timing. Cassia listened to him with her full attention, which was the genuine article. She had not survived 11 years of editing the Brook Street Review by pretending to listen. And she heard, from the corner of her awareness, the precise moment Tristram stopped moving. Lady Jersey was standing 10 feet off. Cassia did not look at Lady Jersey either. She heard Greaves reach the turn of his argument, and she noted it, and she waited. Tristram reached the sofa. He waited for Greaves to finish his sentence, which was the correct thing to do, and it was the first correct thing he had done since walking through her door. Cassia turned her head, unhurried. She looked at him. 15 years had arranged themselves on his face in the manner that 15 years will. Not harshly, but honestly. He was 42 and looked it, and he looked well, and she noted both facts the way she noted compositors' errors, accurately, without sentiment. His face moved through 3 adjustments in 2 seconds. He did not speak. She rose, curtsied, the polite degree, not the formal one. "Lord Ellisford," she said, at the volume of ordinary hospitality, "my mother-in-law wrote that you had been seen in town. You are welcome to Brook Street. May I present Mr. Greaves of the Temple? He has been laying out an argument I think you will find useful." Tristram found his voice. "Lady Westholme." "Yes." "Mr. Greaves, His Grace has been some years out of London. The question of the precedent, if you would." Greaves, who was 26 and perceptive enough to know the room had tilted without knowing why, went on anyway. Cassia sat angled toward him. Tristram was left standing. He found the chair at the sofa's end. Lady Jersey had unobtrusively vacated it, which was a thing Lady Jersey did when she understood a situation and wished to be useful. And he sat. He listened for 10 minutes. He did not hear a word spoken. He watched Cassia's profile, the angle of her jaw, the way she held her wine-glass once she had retrieved it, the small movement of her head when she was following an argument she found genuinely interesting. She did not look at him once. At the end, Cassia said, "Send me the manuscript, Mr. Greaves. Monday. I shall have a reply by Wednesday." Greaves bowed and withdrew. She turned fully to Tristram, quietly, loud enough that Lady Jersey, now standing 3 feet off with a fan and an expression of absolute neutrality, could hear every syllable. "Your Grace, you did not know this was my house?" He answered quietly, "No, I thought not." A pause that held something between sadness and amusement, not the cold kind, not the surgical kind, but the kind that has been worn smooth by long use. "Well, you are here now. Would you like tea, or would you prefer to go home and write me a letter?" Lady Jersey's fan stopped moving. 3 beats passed. Cassia waited through all 3 of them without shifting her gaze. "I prefer to stay, madam," Tristram said. "Without tea, if I may." A flicker at the corner of her mouth. Not a smile, precisely, but the shape a smile leaves behind. "Thursday next at 4. I receive privately. Bring no letter." He held her gaze. "Yes." She turned to Lord Holland. Tristram sat 3 minutes more, which was the correct interval, and then he rose. She gave him her hand, gloved, extended at the precise angle of civil departure. He bowed over it without touching it. She withdrew. He crossed the room. He found his coat. He found the carriage. He sat in it alone in the November dark, and somewhere between Brook Street and Grosvenor Square he said, aloud, to no one at all, "Good God." His voice did not sound like his own. She received him on Thursday at 4 in the drawing room, not the study. Tea on the table, the good china, 30 minutes implied by the placement of the cups. Cassia was at the window when he arrived, and crossed to the sofa without hurry. "Sit down, Lord Ellisford," she said. He sat. She poured. She handed him the cup before he could reach for it, which established, without a word about it, that this was her house and her table and her time. "I will receive you on Mondays," she said. "Private calls, 4 o'clock, 1 hour. No letters between visits, no announced calls on other days, no flowers." Tristram looked at her. "Those are your terms." "They are." "And the purpose of the Monday visits?" "I have not decided," Cassia said. "That is why there are terms." He did not negotiate. She had half expected him to. He was a duke and a Tory, and had been both for 15 years. But he simply nodded once, the nod of a man who has understood that the ground he is standing on is not his and has decided to stand on it anyway. "Monday, then," he said. "Monday," she said. He left at 4:30. She heard the carriage from the window, though she did not go to the window to hear it. She returned to her desk, to the December number's second proof, to the compositor's pencil marks in the margin of the prison reform piece. The fire burned steadily. The rain had stopped. She did not look at the clock. The first 3 Monday afternoons covered Catholic Relief, the Cumberland Magistrates, and the Review's editorial positions on the corn question. Cassia spoke as editor. Tristram responded as a Tory peer who had voted against every position she had published for 6 years. And neither of them raised 1811. And neither of them pretended the conversation was anything other than what it was. 2 intelligent people in a room with a great deal of history between them, discussing the present with deliberate care. He was, she discovered, better than she had expected him to be. Not on the politics. She had known from the division lists that he was a reliable Tory vote, which was not a recommendation, but on the reading. He had read the review. Not selectively, not in summary, but the pieces themselves, the long ones, the ones that required an hour of genuine attention. He cited paragraph numbers. He disagreed with specific sentences. On the Cumberland Magistrates question, he was wrong, and she told him so. And he argued his position for 12 minutes before conceding 1 clause and holding the rest, which was the correct thing to do with an argument you believed. In the 4th week, she handed him a proof sheet across the study desk. A witness account from the Northern Assizes, a piece she was uncertain about, not the facts, but the framing. "Tell me whether the procedural argument holds," she said. Their gloved fingers met on the paper. He held his side a half-second past the moment of transfer. She did not let go immediately either. 2 seconds, perhaps 3, neither of them commenting on it, both of them pretending to read the first paragraph of the piece. He read it carefully. He disagreed with the fourth paragraph on procedural grounds and said so with precision. Specific grounds, specific case law. The kind of objection that required actual knowledge of how the Northern Assizes functioned. She did not agree with him. She marked the margin. They argued it for 20 minutes, and at 5 o'clock she set the proof sheet on the desk and said, without warmth and without coldness, that he read differently than she had expected a Cumberland Tory to read. "What did you expect?" Tristram said. "Confidence without attention," she said. "You have the confidence. The attention is a surprise." He looked at her for a moment. "I have been reading your review for 6 years, Cassia." He stopped. "Lady Westholme, forgive me." "I noticed," she said, and did not address the name. In the 5th week, Tristram cast a vote in the Lords on the Corn Question Amendment that diverged from the Tory leadership without explanation to his party. In the 6th week, he voted against the leadership again on a procedural matter relating to the Cumberland magistrates' question. Cassia saw both division lists in the Morning Chronicle on the mornings after. She said nothing. In the 6th week, he arrived at 4 with a letter of introduction for a young Tory diplomat. A colleague of his mother's acquaintance, he said, who was seeking a hearing for a position on the Eastern trade question. He handed it to her across the desk. She read it. The handwriting was his. 3 paragraphs. A cordial opening, an explanation of a position already arrived at, a request framed as an inquiry. She read it twice, then set it on the desk and looked up. "Your Grace," she said, "you wrote me a letter much like this 15 years ago. 3 paragraphs explaining something you had already decided. I have not forgotten the cadence. Would you like tea? Or would you like to say what you came to say?" Something moved across his face. He opened his mouth. She raised one hand. "Not tonight. Lord Lansdowne is expecting me at 8. Monday at 4. Bring what you meant to say. I shall decide whether to hear it." He did not argue. He rose, took his hat, and left without the usual exchange at the door. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, and then the street door, and then nothing. She arrived at Lansdowne's at 8 and was good company all evening. She did not mention Tristram Harcourt's name, and nobody asked her to, and Lord Grey made her laugh twice before 10 o'clock, which was his usual rate. On a Wednesday in the 9th week, Mr. Septimus Osborne arrived at Cassia's desk at 2:30 and placed a single folded page on the proof sheets without speaking. She looked up at him. He was 51 and had the face of a man who has been honest with himself for a long time and found it costly and continued anyway. He nodded once, which meant, "Read it," and did not wait. She read it. He was resigning from the Brook Street Review in the spring to take rooms at Lincoln's Inn. He had work to do that a man his age ought to do. He asked her not to answer. She read it twice. She folded it and placed it in the center drawer of her writing desk. She did not answer. The following Monday, when Tristram arrived at 4, the letter was on the desk's surface when he came into the study. Not displayed, not hidden. Simply there, where she had set it down while reaching for a proof sheet. Cassia did not mention it. Tristram saw it. She watched him see it, and watched him choose, deliberately, not to ask. She waited until he had settled in the armchair. Then she said, "Septimus loved me for 5 years without requiring anything of me. Not a word, not an answer, not an acknowledgement. He resigned this week so he would not be here when—" She paused. I wanted you to know what that shape looks like before you spoke to me again. Tristram was quiet, not the silence of a man constructing a reply, but the stillness of a man receiving something he had not been prepared for, and understanding he should not hurry past it. After a moment he nodded once. A single, careful nod. She picked up the proof sheet for the December number. The lead piece needs another paragraph on the prison bill's second reading. Tell me what the lords are actually saying about it. He told her. They spent the rest of the hour on the December number, and neither of them mentioned Septimus Osborne again. On the Monday of the 10th week, she received him in the editorial study rather than the drawing room. He noticed the shift. She saw him notice it in the way he paused at the door, taking in the desk and the proof stacks and the lamp burning at the center. But he did not remark on it. He sat in the armchair opposite her desk. She had a proof sheet in hand and set it down. Tristram, she said. It was the first time she had used his Christian name. He went still in the way a man goes still when something he has been waiting for has arrived, and he is not entirely certain he is ready for it. I am going to say one thing, she said. You will not answer tonight. You will come back Monday next, if you choose to, and you will answer then, not before. He said simply, yes. She looked at the desk for a moment. Then she looked at him, and she began. You wrote me a letter in 1811. I burned it the afternoon it arrived. I remember every word. You wrote that we were of dispositions too disparate for the happiness you would wish for any woman who accepted your name. You wrote that I would receive the intelligence with a dignity that had always distinguished me. She paused. My father read it over my shoulder before I burned it. He said any woman would have been grateful for a duke. Any woman of sense would be grateful to be released before the church. Another pause. Shorter. I believed him for perhaps 2 hours. By dinner, I had understood that any woman of sense would have left you sooner, had she known what you were capable of writing. I did not say this to my father. I have not said it to anyone until tonight. You have spent 8 Mondays in my drawing room and my study pretending to speak only of politics. I am giving you the opening. She waited. He did not speak for 30 seconds. She counted them, not because she needed to, but because she had spent 15 years not counting them, and it seemed right to count them now. Then he said, Cassia, I did not believe a word of that letter when I wrote it. She did not move. My mother required I marry Henrietta Finchingfield for the Regency vote, the Foreign Secretary's daughter. The Harcourt vote mattered in 1811, and my mother knew it, and she told me what was required. He stopped, started again. I did not refuse her. I was 27, and I did not refuse my mother. And I could not tell you the truth of it, because the truth was that I had chosen her preference over you. And I could not bear you to spend the rest of your life wondering whether you had been insufficient. So I wrote the cruelest letter I could construct. I told myself the cruelty was a mercy. He looked at the desk between them. I have said any woman would have been grateful to my looking-glass every morning for 15 years, because it was the only way I could shave without sitting down. I am not arrogant, Cassia. I am a coward who wrote an arrogant sentence and has been living inside it. And that is considerably worse. I do not ask you to forgive it. I am asking what, if anything, would be useful for me to do. A long pause settled in the room. The fire shifted. Rain had started again against the study window. She did not soften. She recalibrated. There was a difference, and she knew it. Come on Mondays, she said. Not other days. No letters, no flowers, no mention of me to your mother. In 3 months, I will tell you whether I wish you to come on Tuesdays as well. In 6 months, I will tell you whether I wish anything further. If the answer is neither, you accept it and do not argue. She looked at him steadily. Those are the terms. He answered without hesitation. Yes. Good. She reached for the proof sheet. Now, Macaulay's brother has written something for the winter number that is too clever by half. Read it and tell me whether I am wrong. He took the pages. He read them carefully, which she had come to expect from him. She watched him read without appearing to watch, a skill she had developed over years of editorial meetings, and noted the moment his expression shifted from attention to the particular slight frown that meant he had found the problem. You are not wrong, he said, returning the pages. The argument collapses in the 3rd paragraph because he is showing off for the reader rather than making the case. He knows the answer before he begins, and the piece knows it too. That is precisely it, she said. They argued about how to repair it for 40 minutes, whether to send it back with notes or simply decline it, whether the 3rd paragraph could be extracted and the rest salvaged, whether Macaulay's brother would take the notes in the spirit intended. At 5 o'clock she rose. He rose. At the door she offered her hand. He took it, gloved, brief, and his grip held one breath longer than propriety required. Her eyes met his once before she withdrew. Monday, he said. Monday, Tristram, she said. The Dowager Duchess of Ellisford arrived at Brook Street on a Wednesday unannounced and stayed 40 minutes. She was 67, and certain in the manner of a woman who has been correct about enough things that she has stopped distinguishing between certainty and correctness. Cassia received her in the drawing room. They discussed the Corn Laws. The Dowager had views on the Corn Laws that were coherent and wrong in 2 specific respects, and Cassia addressed both respects without raising her voice or her color, and offered the Dowager tea, which the Dowager accepted. By the end of 40 minutes, the Dowager had not changed her position on the Corn Laws, but she had registered that the Countess of Westholme was not going to be managed, which was, Cassia judged, the more important outcome. She showed her out civilly. Then she went back to the proof sheets. That Monday, Cassia came to the study where Tristram had been waiting. He arrived early now, by a quarter hour, and she had stopped remarking on it. And she sat opposite him in the armchair rather than at her desk. She closed her eyes for 10 seconds. He waited. Your mother called on Wednesday, she said. She was civil, and I was civil in return, and she left without incident. I am telling you because I will not have my silence on the matter misread. I do not require your intervention. Tristram rose from his chair. He did not speak. He crossed to her and knelt, not with any drama in it, but with the practicality of a man who has understood that standing over her would be wrong and sitting would be too far away. And he removed his gloves, both of them, and took her right hand in both of his bare hands. He held it. 20 seconds, perhaps more. He did not kiss it. He did not speak. He simply held her gloved hand in his bare ones, steadily, as though the steadiness itself were the thing he was offering. Then he released it and returned to his chair. Thank you, he said. For what, precisely? For managing it. For telling me afterward instead of leaving me to hear it elsewhere. For letting me still be here after she came. Cassia looked at him for a moment. Then she reached for a proof sheet. The prison bill's second reading is next Tuesday. I want a paragraph on the likely Lord's vote for the January number. Tell me what you know. He told her. They read in silence for an hour after that. She at her desk, he in the armchair, with the January proof sheets she had given him. And the fire burned down, and she added a log without asking him to move. And he shifted the lamp without being asked, and neither of them commented on any of it. In the following 2 weeks, Tristram cast 3 votes with the Whigs: Catholic Relief, the Corn Question Amendment, and the Prison Bill's second reading. His mother wrote from Cumberland. He did not return to Cumberland. Cassia's mother, Lady Everleigh, arrived from Hampshire with 2 trunks and her customary opinion about the damp of London in winter. Cassia showed her the December number over breakfast and watched her read it with the expression of a woman who has never entirely understood what her daughter does and has arrived, somewhere in her 60s, at a genuine respect for it. On the morning of the 14th week, the Dowager Duchess called on Lady Everleigh at her hotel in Jermyn Street. She was there 40 minutes. Lady Everleigh's note arrived at Brook Street by noon, written in her mother's clear hand. My dear, the Duchess of Ellisford called this morning and told me any woman would be grateful for her son's offer. I thought you ought to know she has said it. Your mother. Cassia read the note at her desk. She set it down. She looked at the proof sheet she had been working on. Then she put on her dark green dress, no jewels, and sent word to her lady's maid. And at 6 o'clock she called for the carriage. She was going to consult Lord Lansdowne on a paragraph in the winter number's lead piece. She had been going to do so in any case. The note from her mother had not changed her destination. It had only clarified what she intended to say when she got there. The antechamber of the House of Lords at 6:15 in the evening held the particular stillness of a space where official business has recently concluded and unofficial business has not yet declared itself. Cassia entered it at 6:15 with her lady's maid, waiting in the outer corridor and a paragraph in her head that she needed Lansdowne to look at before Friday. She had crossed perhaps a third of the antechamber when Tristram stepped into her path. He had been there before her. She registered this immediately, the way she registered everything immediately. He was in his lord's coat and he had not removed his gloves, which meant he had come straight from the chamber. 6 people within hearing: Lansdowne's clerk at the far table, 2 peers near the window, a journalist from the Morning Chronicle with a pencil and a folded sheet, a footman by the inner door, and Septimus Osborne, who had come to collect her and drive her home. One of his last such courtesies before the spring, and she had not told him not to come. Tristram looked at her. She stopped. He had a ring in his pocket. She could not see it, but she had known him long enough now, 10 weeks of Mondays, 40 hours in her drawing room and her study, to know when he was carrying something he had decided to put down. Lady Westholme, he said, at a volume that made no attempt at privacy. I came to the house today, intending to ask you to marry me. The journalist's pencil stopped moving, but he did not lower it. I am not going to, Tristram said. You have built this review for 6 years, while my party has opposed every position in it, and 3 of those positions I privately agreed with and voted against from cowardice. I have been a coward twice where you were concerned. In 1811, when I wrote a letter I did not believe and did not have the courage to refuse, and since, when I buried myself in Cumberland, rather than come to any room where I might have to sit with what I had done. He paused. I will not make you an offer tonight. I may not earn the right to make one at all. What I will do tonight, on the record of this house and on my word as a duke, is commit the Harcourt interest and my personal vote to non-opposition of the Brook Street Review's positions on Catholic relief, the corn question, and the prison bill for the remainder of this session. I do not ask your permission to do it. I should have done it 6 years ago on the merits, and the only reason I did not is the same reason I did not refuse my mother in 1811, and I am done with that reason. He bowed, 1 pace back. He did not turn to leave. He did not retract a syllable. Silence held the antechamber. Lansdowne's clerk had stopped writing. One of the peers by the window had turned from the window. The journalist had not moved his pencil an inch. Cassia looked at Tristram for 5 seconds. She was aware of every person in the room and aware of Septimus 12 feet to her left. And she was aware of her mother's note, which she had read 4 hours ago and had not been able to unread. She turned to Septimus, not breaking the look entirely, letting it release slowly, like a held breath. "Mr. Osborne, I shall be a quarter hour longer. Would you oblige me by waiting?" "Certainly, Lady Westholme," Septimus said. She turned back to Tristram. Ordinary conversational volume. Clear enough for the journalist to hear if he was paying attention, which he was. "Your Grace, I shall see Lord Lansdowne briefly. You will wait here. When I return, we shall walk to my carriage together. You will call at Brook Street on Monday at 4. I shall decide what to say to you there." A pause. "Not here." Tristram inclined his head. "Yes." She went into Lansdowne. Tristram and Septimus stood 12 feet apart in the antechamber for 14 minutes and did not speak. The journalist pretended to read his folded sheet. The peers by the window resumed their conversation at a lower volume than before. The footman by the inner door looked at the door. When Cassia emerged, she went directly to Septimus and took his arm, the long-standing courtesy unchanged. Tristram fell into step a pace behind them. At the carriage, Septimus handed her in and stepped back. Tristram stood at the door. She looked at him from inside the carriage. "Monday, Tristram," she said. "Monday, Cassia," he said. She reached out and pulled the door closed herself. By Friday noon, the Chronicle had printed a paragraph. His Grace the Duke of Ellisford made a statement of some personal and political interest in the antechamber of the House on Thursday evening. The Harcourt interest, it appears, has undergone a reorientation. Details await the division lists. By Saturday, 3 London drawing rooms had the story in 3 versions, none of them entirely accurate and all of them more dramatic than the truth, which was already dramatic enough. Lord Lansdowne, asked about it on Monday morning, said only, "His Grace has developed a conscience in public. I await his votes." Tristram cast all 3 the following week. Catholic relief. The Corn Question Amendment. The Prison Bill second reading. His mother wrote from Cumberland, requiring him to return at once. He did not reply. In April, a letter arrived at Tristram's house in Grosvenor Square, in a hand he had not seen in 15 years. 1 sentence. "Lord Ellisford, I should be glad if you would call at Brook Street on Monday at 4. C. Osborne, Westholme." He arrived at 4. She was at the fireplace, not the sofa, and she crossed toward him when he entered, halfway across the drawing room, and then she stopped at 2 feet. "Tristram," she said. "Cassia," he said. She took his left hand in both of hers and turned it palm up. She traced his lifeline once with her thumb, slowly, through the full length of it, and his hand stayed open in hers. He did not move the other hand from his side. Then she looked up at him, and it was she who went up on her toes. Her hands still holding his left hand open between them, not at his face, not at his neck, and kissed him. Closed, a count of 4. Open, a count of 6. His free hand rose to her waist, slowly, as though he were lifting something he was not entirely certain he had permission to lift. When they parted, she was still holding his hand palm up in both of hers, his lifeline under her thumbs. "That is the answer to the offer you did not make," she said. He breathed out. "Yes." "The offer you make next," she said. you make on a Monday, in this room, and I shall accept it." He met her eyes steadily. "Yes." She released his hand. She crossed to the bell pull and rang for tea. He stood where she had left him for a moment, looking at his own open palm. The Dowager wrote to request she might call at Brook Street. Cassia received her on a Tuesday in March. They discussed the corn question for 40 minutes. The Dowager left civilly, and Cassia had the distinct impression of a woman who had expected to find something she could manage, and had found instead something she would have to respect, which was, in its way, a more significant outcome. The Dowager did not write again for 6 weeks. In October, Cassia and Tristram married at Brook Street. 12 guests, no announcement until the day before. Lansdowne came. Gray came. Septimus, still in residence until the end of the month, stood at the back of the drawing room with his hat in his hands and smiled at the floor when Cassia said yes, which was the smile of a man who had wanted something for 5 years and had wanted her happiness longer. Gerard Osborne, home from Eton for the autumn half, shook Tristram's hand afterward with the directness of a 16-year-old who has decided to approve of someone and intends to make it known. That evening, alone in their room at 8 Brook Street, she had declined to move to Grosvenor Square. He had agreed without argument. They would keep a smaller house in the country for the holidays. Cassia sat on the edge of the bed in a plain white nightdress, her hair loose. Tristram came from the dressing room and stopped inside the door. "Cassia," he said. "Come here, Tristram," she said. He crossed the room. She took his left hand again, the gesture from April, the one that was theirs now. Palm up, both her hands around it. She traced the lifeline. Then she folded his fingers closed over hers. "I chose this," she said. "Every Monday. Tonight. I want you to know that I chose it." "I know," he said. She drew him to the bed. The single candle on the nightstand burned down to its socket sometime near dawn and went out by itself, and neither of them noticed because they were asleep, her hand still loosely around his. The closing scene is the editorial dinner in June, before the wedding, when the summer number was at press and the drawing room at 8 Brook Street held 11 people, and the smell of cold roast and good wine and the particular ease of a room that has been used for argument and has not been damaged by it. Lansdowne was at the table. Gray was at the table. Septimus was in his usual chair at the far end, still in residence until July, with the expression of a man who has made his peace with something and found the peace more spacious than expected. Gerard Osborne was home from Eton and was laughing at something Lansdowne had said, a genuine laugh, the loud, unguarded kind. And Lansdowne looked pleased with himself in the way that men who are genuinely funny always look when they have landed a joke on a 16-year-old. Tristram was at Cassia's left. She had introduced him at the start of the evening as Lord Ellisford, who has been reading proofs, and the table had accepted this description with the equanimity of people who had been watching the situation develop for 6 months and had their own views about it, none of which they were going to express tonight. After dinner, when the guests had moved from the table to the drawing room, and the proof sheets were still on the sideboard where Cassia had left them that morning, she crossed to the sideboard and picked one up. The Scotch whiskey piece, a contributor's account of the distillery's question, which she had edited twice and was still not entirely satisfied with. She turned and held it out to Tristram. "Tell me if I have been too kind." He took it. She watched him read. Half a minute, perhaps less. He had learned to read her proofs quickly without reading them carelessly, which was one of the things she had not expected to discover about him and had discovered anyway. He returned the sheet. "You have been accurate," he said, "which is kinder than kind." She took the sheet back, set it on the sideboard. She did not touch his hand, though his hand was there. Outside, the June evening was long and pale, the kind that makes London look briefly like a city that has decided to be generous. The Brook Street Review went to press on Friday.